I have shown you a lot of expensive things on this channel. Jets that cost more than a skyscraper, palaces you're not allowed to visit, watches worth more than most people's homes. But tonight I want to show you something different, because this might be the single most secretive object that money has ever bought. It is 180 meters long. That's nearly 600 feet, almost 2 full football fields, floating. It reportedly cost more than $600 million, which would make it the most expensive yacht ever built. It has a name, Azzam, and it has a legend. And here's the strange part. We know its length down to the centimeter. We know exactly how fast it goes. We know how many engines are bolted into its belly. And yet, to this day, there is not a single confirmed photograph of what it looks like on the inside. Think about that for a second. $600 million, the largest private yacht on planet Earth, and the people who own it have managed to keep the inside of it a complete secret. So tonight, let me take you as close as anyone on the outside has ever gotten to Azzam. Let's start with the number that matters, because on this channel, the number always matters. Azzam measures 180.6 meters, call it 590 feet. To put that in perspective, a Boeing 747 is about 76 meters long. You could park 2 of them nose to tail on Azzam's deck and still have space left over. It is longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall if you laid the tower on its side. When Azzam was delivered in September of 2013, it didn't just become a big yacht. It became the longest private motor yacht in the world, a title it still holds today, more than a decade later. And to give you a sense of the company it keeps, Roman Abramovich's Eclipse, which held the crown before this, is about 162 meters. Jeff Bezos's sailing yacht, Kourou, one of the most talked about boats on Earth, is around 127 meters. Azzam towers over both of them. It weighs in at around 13,000 gross tons. That's not the number for a yacht. That's the number for a small cruise ship. Here's a comparison that really lands it though. A United States Navy destroyer, an Arleigh Burke-class warship, is roughly 505 feet long. Azzam, at 590 feet, is longer than a frontline naval destroyer. This is a private pleasure boat that outsizes a warship, and as you're about to hear, in some ways outruns one too. Here's the detail I love most though. Azzam wasn't even supposed to be this big. When Lürssen, the legendary German shipyard behind it, first drew up the plans, Azzam was designed to be 145 meters. Somewhere in what the builders politely called the process of optimization, it grew by another 35 meters. Let that sink in. The part they added on, almost by accident, is longer than most super yachts are in total. Azzam was built by Lürssen in Germany, and if you know anything about yachts, you know that name. Lürssen builds the ships that other billionaires' yachts look small next to. Azzam took roughly 4 years to build, from the first sheet of steel to the day it slid into the water on the 5th of April 2013. 4 years, and the entire time it was wrapped in secrecy. The project was so confidential that even the Emirati engineer who directed the construction, a man named Mubarak Saad al-Ahbabi, ran it with the kind of discretion you'd expect from a defense program, not a pleasure boat. The exterior lines were drawn by Nauta Yachts, an Italian design studio far better known for elegant sailing yachts than for a steel giant like this one. And that tension is exactly what makes Azzam look the way it does. Long, low, and impossibly sleek for something the size of a naval frigate. The name itself, Azzam, means resolute or determined in Arabic. And once you see how it was engineered, that name starts to make a lot of sense. Because here's where Azzam stops being just a big boat and starts being genuinely unbelievable. Most giant yachts are slow. They're floating apartment buildings. They lumber from one harbor to the next. Azzam does not lumber. Azzam has a top speed of over 32 knots. That's around 37 miles per hour. For a ship this size, that number is close to physically absurd. To pull that off, they gave it a power plant you would not believe. 2 gas turbines, the kind of engines you'd normally find on an aircraft, paired with 2 diesel engines, putting out a combined 47,000 horsepower, driving 4 water jets instead of ordinary propellers. One report compared its total power output to that of a large wind farm. And all of that is pushing a hull with a draft of only 4.3 meters, about 14 feet. For a 180-meter ship, that is shockingly shallow. It means Azzam can sprint at over 30 knots and still slip into shallow coastal water that should be far too tight for a vessel its size. And it does it on water jets rather than exposed propellers, which is part of how a ship the length of 2 football fields can nose into a shallow bay without running aground. Engineers have described the whole propulsion package as one of the most ambitious ever fitted to a private vessel. Remember, they didn't just want the biggest yacht in the world. They wanted the biggest yacht in the world that could also move like something half its size. So why would anyone want a $600 million yacht that can outrun most of the boats around it? The widely reported answer is simple and a little bit chilling. Speed is security. A yacht that can hit 32 knots and duck into water too shallow to follow is a yacht that is very, very hard to catch. And for the kind of person who owns Azzam, being hard to catch is worth a great deal. Now we know the outside, we know the engines, but the inside, that is where the wall comes down. Here's what we actually do know. Azzam's main salon, the Grand Central Room, is 29 meters long. That's 95 feet of open, uninterrupted space with a beam of 18 meters. And this is the real flex. No pillars. None. On a ship, holding up a ceiling that wide with no supporting columns is an engineering achievement all on its own. It is essentially a ballroom at sea. The interior was designed by a French designer named Christophe Léonie, and he was not some random hire. Léonie had already worked on the owners' palaces and residences on land, so he brought that same royal residence language on board. The very few details that have ever leaked out describe wood furniture veneered with mother-of-pearl marquetry, and a golden palatial style far closer to an Abu Dhabi palace than to a glossy modern yacht. But that is genuinely almost everything the public knows. Azzam can host up to 36 guests across 18 staterooms, served by a crew of as many as 80 people. 80 people to run one single boat. And beyond that, nothing. No interior photographs, no walkthroughs, no glossy magazine spread. Lursen and the owners locked the whole thing down, and it has stayed locked down for over 10 years. In an age where everything ends up online, that might be the most impressive feature Azzam has. Which brings us to the obvious question. Who has the money and the reason to build the most expensive, most secretive yacht on Earth? Azzam was commissioned by Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the president of the United Arab Emirates and the ruler of Abu Dhabi. And when you understand who the Al Nahyan family is, $600 million starts to sound almost reasonable. The Al Nahyans sit at the very top of Abu Dhabi, which holds the overwhelming majority of the UAE's oil. And through sovereign wealth funds like ADIA, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the family is tied to an estimated fortune in the hundreds of billions of dollars. We have called them, on this very channel, one of the richest families on the entire planet, and we meant it. For a family operating on that scale, a $600 million yacht isn't a splurge. It's a rounding error. To give you a sense of it, the Al Nahyans are tied to stakes in everything from Manchester City Football Club to some of the most valuable real estate on Earth, and their sovereign wealth funds are counted among the largest pools of money on the planet. Sheikh Khalifa passed away in 2022, but Azzam has remained within the family, a floating monument to a level of wealth most of us genuinely cannot picture. And because Azzam is so secret, the rumors have had more than a decade to grow. If you go looking, you will read that it has a missile defense system, that it has bulletproof glass, that there's an armored safe room, an anti-drone array, the works. And I want to be straight with you, because that's how we do things here. I could not verify a single one of those claims. Lursen doesn't confirm security features on any of its ships. That discretion is part of what you're paying for. So treat the missile defense stories as exactly what they are. Rumors drifting in the same fog of secrecy that hides the interior. The truth is, what's confirmed about this ship is already impressive enough without them. So where does all of this leave Azzam today? For more than 10 years, it has worn the crown as the largest yacht in the world. But that crown is finally about to slip. A vessel called REV Ocean, nearly 195 meters long, is on its way. And when it is finally delivered, it will be longer than Azzam. But here's the twist, and it's the reason Azzam keeps the title that actually matters. REV Ocean isn't really a private pleasure yacht at all. It was built as a research and expedition vessel designed to study the oceans, cruising along at a modest 17 knots. Azzam is something else entirely, a pure, private 32-knot statement of power and money. So even when REV Ocean quietly takes the record for longest, Azzam remains exactly what it has always been. The largest private motor yacht ever built, and maybe that is the most fitting thing about the whole story. The most expensive yacht in the world was designed, from the keel up, to deliver the one thing that money usually cannot buy. Privacy. You can see it from a distance. A low silver ghost, sliding across the horizon at 30 knots. But you will almost certainly never see inside it. And for the family that built it, that is precisely the point. That's Azzam, $600 million, 180 meters. And a secret it has managed to keep for over a decade. If you enjoyed this deep dive, you'll love the others here on Billionaire Atlas. I'll see you in the next one.